Hello everybody, welcome back to the Scouted Football Podcast. I hope you're all doing well as we're almost a month into 2021 and we've reached the halfway stage of the season in most major leagues, and it was a nice little milestone for us at Scouted last week as we reached our 50th episode on the Scouted Pod. For number 51 we've gone with something a little different, something I'm going to call the Receipts episode. We've been fortunate enough to speak to world-leading experts, journalists, players, coaches, sporting directors over the first 50 episodes. And we've discussed quite a fair few under-23 players, many of whom have gone on to do very well over the last 18 months or so. And there's no new guest this week, but you will hear a number of different guests as we've compiled the best takes from the Scouted Football Podcast so far. Taking you all the way back to the summer of 2019, myself, Stephen Ganavis and Justin Sosa, on the very first episode of the Scouted Football Podcast, we picked our breakout stars for the 2019-20 campaign. We talked about a Norwegian in Salzburg, a Romanian in Belgium, and an American in the Netherlands. Here's what we had to say. Obviously, the theme that we're going with in this opening episode is breakout players in Europe's top flight outside of the top five leagues. And one player that really got my attention over the summer was Yanis Hagi with Romania at the Under-21 Euros. He has subsequently earned a move to KRC Genk from Viitorul Constanta in the Romanian league to the Belgian Pro League. He's very much a number 10, and based on his early performances there, he's looking as though he's going to play in a midfield three, but as the most advanced. He plays with this silk and this class and this craft that is really nice to watch. And in Belgium, even still, he can be erratic at times, but he does really, he's very silky, and he has a nice move where he'll dribble in one direction and then he'll quickly turn, roll his man, and then float the ball out wide. It's not just his dribbling and carrying ability to get into positions where he can progress the ball. It's his distribution as well, which is quite nice, and perhaps why he's on set pieces as well. Another player who is in sort of a lesser but top flight European league is Erling Haaland at Red Bull Salzburg in the Austrian Bundesliga. Steve, you've seen him a couple of times, and if we're being honest, everybody who contributes to Scouted knows about Erling Haaland, about what he's about, because he is such a striking figure when you watch him play. Steve, he's been great in this first full season at Salzburg. There's only been about 4 games, but he scored 7 goals, and it's a sign of things to come for a 19-year-old.
Yeah, he is an absolute beast. He's built like a truck. In Norway, he's at Molde scoring goals for fun, I think, as a 17-year-old. And he's just moved over to Salzburg now, and he started the season off very strongly. I think there was one preseason friendly goal where he just picked the ball up at halfway, and he looks like a big boy, and he's a big boy, but he just puts his head down and he just dribbled through everyone. And you just see this guy is a complete package. I think up front, alongside some of the other firepower Salzburg have, they've got Sekou Koita, who starred at the Under-20 World Cup. He's going to be an absolute handful. Going back to the Under-20 World Cup, there is a game against Honduras that he scored 7 goals. He's just scary.
Well, another player I wanted to talk about was Serginho Dest, who for the U.S. Under-20s at the Under-20 World Cup and for U.S. youth national teams for a while now has been absolutely phenomenal at right back. And this year he looks like he's going to get his fair share of time in Ajax's first team. Having already started their Super Cup, so to speak, I'm not sure what it's called, and then being on the bench for a few of their Champions League qualifiers for their first league match, and then I believe he came off the bench in their most recent Champions League qualifier. With his skill set, I mean, there's a lot of talk about him within the U.S. fan base of wanting him to get to get capped by the senior national team, which I don't think is unreasonable, especially with the way that the national team's been going. We've been capping a lot of players who, whether you believe so or not, deserve a cap, or just for the sake of giving a player a cap. And I think Dest is definitely one that they need to look into, especially with Greg Berhalter considering to play Tyler Adams as this right back center mid hybrid rather than a natural defensive midfielder, because Serginho Dest provides exactly what he's looking for in that position, in the sense that he can get forward, he can come inside into midfield and play with other center midfielders and link play between defense and offense. He's good on the ball, and when it comes to tracking back, there's holes in his defensive game, and I think that's a lot of people's main concern about him. But when you watch him against France or against Ecuador, basically within big games, he shows up on either side of the ball.
In September 2019, we celebrated the return of the Champions League, which included an Erling Haaland debut hat-trick against Genk, also the emergence of another excellent young Salzburg player, Dominik Szoboszlai. Phil Costa explained his ability from dead ball situations.
Particularly from set pieces, he's got this technique where he gets so much pace on the ball. It's like pace and dip, which is, two deadly combinations. And this free kick against Rapid Vienna was literally, if you could put an ideal imaginary target in the top corner, it would have slapped it, gone straight through it. I mean, it was honestly perfect delivery, perfect technique, up and over the wall. Goalkeeper stood absolutely no chance.
Lou Davies then forecasted Victor Osimhen's rise to prominence with Lille, predicting a breakout season for the Nigerian international, who impressed with Charleroi in Belgium, earned a move to Lille, and then swapped Lille for Napoli this past summer.
He's one that's really caught my eye, not least for his goal scoring, but just for the way that he works across the defences. So he's not just a poacher. He's a bit more than just a goal scorer. He can attack space from deep. He can slide across the defenders and really uses his physique and frame and size to make room for himself, make room for others, hold up the ball, dump it off. I think he's just a really dynamic striker who can... I think he could have a breakout season in the Champions League this season.
And David Cartledge told us about Pedri, now renowned for his great start at Barcelona, but still something of an unknown quantity back in his days as a 16-year-old, setting the Spanish Segunda División alight with his craft and ingenuity at Las Palmas.
The best place to start with Pedri, because 16 years old, he's already got a move to Barcelona lined up. And he's really, just the way he's burst onto the scene, has been phenomenal. He made his debut in August against Huesca, and then he came straight from the juvenile team, the under-19s. He's already got a move locked down to Barcelona. Apparently, an offer from a Premier League club was turned down for him as well. But Barcelona's let him stay there on loan, let him learn, let him play week in, week out. He's a little attacking midfielder, can also play in a wide role, second striker role. Very, very quick, unbelievable dribbling ability and skill. And he's already banging in goals. He's, assists. He's really been the sensation, honestly. He's been, I'd probably say in terms of all the young players in Spain, alongside Ansu Fati, he's probably been the biggest sensation in terms of the young players that have come through this season.
Around this time a year ago, we spoke to Connor Rowden, best known as Rowd JRSG on Twitter, about England's youth international age groups. He had some choice opinions on what would be best for Rhian Brewster's development, as well as two teenagers who are now playing regularly for Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich.
Brewster needs a team around him. He's not Sancho, he's not Foden, who is going to constantly be on the ball, even in a bad team. So he could easily fade out of games where Swansea aren't dominant or Swansea aren't helping him get into good positions around the area. I also am a little bit sceptical about the track record of players like him at this age, at these levels of in competitive leagues. He's a goal scorer, he's a number 9, but he's not 6'3", and he's not lightning quick. He's a good athlete, and he's not small, but he's not going to lead the line at this level like a Calvert-Lewin did, even when Calvert-Lewin was struggling a little bit to put it all together. He's not that type of player. And I think if you look around, there aren't that many type of 19-year-olds playing, at least in the top 2 leagues. You look at someone like Tammy Abraham, who is a better athlete than Brewster. His struggles when he was on loan at Swansea as well. Although he actually didn't do as badly as people thought, because Swansea was struggling and his goals weren't quite there like they have been everywhere else. he started to get picked apart a bit. And I worry that, although I still believe Brewster will come good eventually, I do worry about just how high the expectations are for Brewster to hit the ground running. And the expectations are coming from a lot of people who I don't think have actually seen him play and don't know what type of player he is. So although I think he's going to have a very successful career long term, I just think people should have a bit of caution with him to immediately be ripping up the championship or anything like that.
Are there any other names of note in that under-17 squad, from what you've seen, that are sort of worthy of being held in the same conversation as Harvey Elliott or Karamoko Dembele?
Yeah, I think the 2000s were a rare year with Sancho, Hudson-Odoi, and then the 01s and the 02s were very good as well. I think a lot of people think the 2003s are maybe not as good as the 2000s, because I'm not sure you can ever expect to have a group as good as that again. But they're up there, and you've got Jude Bellingham at Birmingham, who, to be 16 and playing a fairly typical midfield role in the championship isn't normal. He's not just being shoved out wide or played as the third man in midfield or brought on and off as sub. He's excelling in a fairly workmanlike position, doing a bit of everything. And he could have joined anyone in Europe the last couple of years, but I think him and the people behind him have decided to trust Birmingham, and Birmingham have repaid that trust by sticking to his development plan, and that's where he is today. There's another lad called Jamal Musiala who left Chelsea for Bayern Munich in the summer. He's also eligible for Germany, but at the minute, at least, it seems like he's sticking with England, and he's still very lightweight, but he's just a midfielder who evades pressure on the ball, super well balanced, just glides with the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how he fills out, where he gets athletically in the next few years, and what kind of pathway is available at Bayern for him, because it's not exactly something we've seen that regular. It's not something we've really seen before.
As seasons were postponed across the world due to the coronavirus pandemic, Mo Ali gave us the lowdown on two Olympique Marseille products whose careers at the club had taken very different paths. I think one of the things that stood out to me about Kamara was the fact that, this 18, 19-year-old kid, fresh off the back of that under-19 Euros, where he was a standout player, he came into one of France's most historic sides in a crucial position on the pitch and, more often than not, looked very much at home. What is it about his style of play that sticks out to you?
Easiest way to answer that is that his versatility. I mean, I absolutely love his ball playing qualities at centre back. His ease of being shunted further forward into a number 6 role and then being very, very calm on the ball, bringing his defensive traits in front of the back four, stopping forward blocks is I think the best format. And I think actually personally, from watching him over the last sort of year or two and seeing him played around 30-40% of the time as number 6, he actually performs better there for me.
The final Marseille player I'd like to discuss is Isaac Lihaji. It's his exploits at the Under-17 World Cup back in October, which brought him to our attention at Scouted. With regards to Lihaji, what have you seen and heard of him in Marseille circles?
Well, with my experience of Lihaji game, a couple of months before the Under-17 World Cup, I actually was in Stoke, Burton-upon-Trent at the FA's St George's Park, where Marseille had played a pre-season friendly against Stoke last summer. And I actually didn't know anything about Lihaji at that point. They played a friendly against Stoke City, and he was honestly one of the players that absolutely stood out. Like, the fact that we had a right winger who had pace, who had creativity, who could dribble very well past opponents, who was a constant goal threat and really geared up for it.
Guardian Sport Deputy Editor Ed Aarons joined us in May to discuss the launch of his new book, Made in Africa, as well as detailing the various pathways certain Premier League players had forged out of the continent. Ed explains how the role of academies such as Génération Foot and Diambar are enormous in places like Senegal.
It's an interesting question. I think that the Sadio Mane story sort of explains this quite well. In fact, he was only at Génération Foot for about 6 months in total, I think. And this just shows you how extraordinary a player he is, the talent that he had. He came from from playing in his local league to Generation Foot and then to France within 6 months, 7 months. So I think that's quite a rare process, though. Normally, they spend 2 or 3 years at Generation Foot, and the good thing about them is that they also their first team, they play in the first division now in the top flight in Senegal. They won the league. They were denied winning the double by Diambars in the cup final. I can't remember exactly what happened, but and the oldest player in these teams is 18, I think. So it's really it's absolutely extraordinary. And then they're playing against adults from the rest of the country and winning the title and winning the cup. So it's really a really good place for them to learn. And I think clubs in Europe are all watching them. And obviously Mets have an advantage at the moment with Generation Foot, but I think a lot is done on the they try and guess in a way. I suppose it is what the character of the player is going to be like as well, because as you mentioned before, it is a massive thing for young men like this, kids really, to be moving not only to a different country but a different continent with different weather and different customs and things like that. So I think it's still quite a big risk for clubs to take a player straight from Africa, but the rewards are obvious because of the talent that is there.
ESPN and BT Sport football pundit Julien Laurent hopped on the pod to discuss Paris Saint-Germain's academy and why the club couldn't hold on to top youth prospects despite having one of the largest pools of talent to pick from the world over. He explained why Ile-de-France is one of the most prolific areas in the world for producing top talent, including World Cup winners.
So there's a few reasons, like I explained a bit in the piece, but if we can go a bit deeper, one, the amount of people who live there, obviously, there's around 12 to 13 million people who live in Paris and in the area, the banlieue around, whether it's the west suburbs, which is a bit posher, the north suburbs, quite tough suburbs, east, a bit in between, and south as well. So you already have there's a lot of people in there. Then the grassroots system in France is very, very, very well organized with all the different leagues. You've got loads of clubs everywhere, especially in Paris, where you have also, which is very surprising for a big capital like that, but you've got loads of football pitches everywhere pretty much where you can play all the time. But I think for me the biggest thing is the council estate areas, which are very, very prominent in Paris, not so much in central Paris, but all around the city. So it could create issues, of course, and we've had social issues and we still do and stuff like that. But also means that in those council estates, you've got usually a big football pitch right in the middle of the blocks where everybody gathers and everybody plays for hours and hours and hours to end. And I think for me, you could give me any academy, any coaches, anything, the best school to learn how to play football and to learn the technique and to have that in you is to play in the streets somewhere with your friends for hours and hours. And I think that's certainly how I started. That's how a lot of the players who play now at professional level who came from Paris started as well, play for the national team. If you look at Paul Pogba or Kylian Mbappe, it was all down their blogs, all playing with their mates from the council estate, 3v3, 4v4, 5v5, no referees, no fouls. You play with much bigger players, much older players who rough you up and beat you up, and you can't say anything and you have to keep playing on. And the only thing you could do is be so good technically that no one can get the ball off you, or every time you get the ball, you do something good with it and you avoid all the tackles and all the challenges and all the fouls and etc., etc. And I think Paris for me and Parisian players are all about technique, and also if some of them are strong physically, like Abu Dhabi or Paul Pogba, who are the two that springs to mind because they were so strong and so tall, but also so good technically. It comes from there, and it's better if you've got the physical ability, of course, but if you're Wissam Ben Yedder or Riyad Mahrez and you're very skinny and short, then you have to develop your technicality. Otherwise, you don't exist in those kind of games because, it's like war.
English players abroad has been a niche topic of late, but with the likes of Noni Madueke at PSV Eindhoven and Marcus Edwards at Vitória Guimarães entertaining fans further afield, we sat down and chatted with Cam Melling, who keeps a close eye on every English player currently playing outside the British Isles. Just coming back to you, Cam, how highly rated is Madueke at PSV? Have you heard any whisperings? Because I mean, they're not short of top young players. They're actually brimming, in fact.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with him. Like you said, those stats. Like at the start of the season, I was thinking maybe he might break into the young PSV side, and then suddenly he's played 6 games and then he's playing for the first team. He's traveling with the first team. Is at that age, I was so impressed. Like, and you said PSV do seem to play a lot of their young forwards and seems to do quite well. And hopefully, he can stay there for another year and really nail down a spot in the first team. I didn't expect him to even be playing for the first team at this sort of stage. So he must be so far ahead of his sort of schedule. In his mind, he probably always backed himself to make the first team. But PSV must be pretty impressed with the way he's done and the way hopefully he can get that first team goal start next season. And I'll probably see him may even move up the England ranks as well. Hopefully, maybe he make England 21 next season.
Yeah, because we've seen that. I mean, Bukayo Saka at Arsenal this season has done tremendously, to become what is at the moment one of their most relied upon players. But outside of Arsenal and youth football circles, at the beginning of the season, not many people would have heard of Saka. So I think you're right in saying that Madueke and his sort of his growth so soon has been. His development rather has been so sharp and I mean, like you said, no one expected him to be making the first team just yet, but it's been hugely encouraging. But another one who we've been raving about lately, who left Tottenham for good last summer, was Marcus Edwards, and I can now admit that the propaganda on the Scouted Football timeline has been some of my doing, but it's purely and simply because he's thriving in an environment in Portugal at Vitória Guimarães, where he's been given regular games. And he's played and scored in the Europa League and Portugal's top flight this season, and keeps impressing game by game. We were just discussing last night. He loves a dribble and then cuts inside and hit a shot off the bar against Benfica, and he's just such an aesthetic player. Why do you think he's done so well over in Portugal? In a league which is, apart from Eric Dyer at Sporting years ago, doesn't really have a history of English players having played there.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the way you said about the regular games is so important. That loan spell in Holland gave him like a good first taste for 20 games or whatever, a few goal involvements. But this year, like now he's playing most games. I think it's 34 appearances I've got here. He's just impressing every game. He can't be dropped now really the way he's playing. I think he's scoring against Arsenal as well in Europa League. So that was probably a pretty big moment for him. But it wasn't a one-off the way he's gone on now, getting goals and assists most games or every other game. And that sort of that run of games has really helped him. Just the way if he was back in England, maybe through side appearances, maybe it found it difficult to make an impact.
Elsewhere in Portugal, Portuguese football expert Tom Cundert had plenty to say on Nuno Mendes, an exciting young left-back at Sporting.
One who's really impressed me, without any doubt, is Nuno Mendes, the left-back. He really does look a fantastic prospect, and a lot of talk already about Manchester United being interested, sniffing around. And from what I've seen, quite honestly, I'd say he is definitely the player at Sporting who looks most likely to go on and make it very big. Really, really fast, physical, aggressive left back who's got a really good touch and fantastic crossing ability.
And renowned scout and author Lee Scott gave his appraisal on Reading's Michael Olise, among others.
He's a player who can beat a man with a dribble. He can pick the right pass. He can play little combinations in around the penalty area. At 18, he plays with a maturity and almost a sense of being much, much older than he is, just because Reading are given so much responsibility to him when they're in their attacking phase. I think that of all the players that I picked for the list, if I had to say that one of them was going to play at Premier League level, I think it would definitely be Michael Olise.
Meanwhile, Sam Tighe told us what to expect from Ibrahima Diallo at Southampton and told a tale of Federico Chiesa's fiery temperament following his move to Juventus.
So I spent last Friday just watching Ibrahima Diallo. What I saw over the course of the day, I mean, I started off reasonably happy, and then by the end of the second full game, I was like, oh God, this guy's a player. Like this is a really good signing. He's anchoring a France under-21 side. Yeah, Southampton have been waiting for a Højbjerg replacement, and what they're looking for in that box-to-box number 8 role in their 4-4-2 is someone who can absolutely cover the ground and get up and down the pitch, but someone who is reasonably well-rounded, who's comfortable on the ball, can take the ball and can dictate play, can track back and track their runners properly and get their foot in and be combative. Someone who could turn it over and start attacks quickly. I see that in Diallo. I see him as good a defender, and I think he's more comfortable on the ball. It's a shallow analysis, but I think it works for this. That means nothing without the eye test, but he's taking the onus. And he actually pulls out some quite nice reverse-angled passes, first time as well sometimes, to really catch defences off guard. He is an extremely intense and fiery character. Obviously, there's a lot of passion that runs through his game, and there's a lot of passion that underlines him representing Fiorentina. I was lucky last year. I was able to spend a day with Fiorentina training in New Jersey. So I watched the entire. I was back in the Vincenzo Montella era. Basically watched the whole thing from start to finish. During these training sessions, I saw Chiesa. I saw him at his rawest form in training, and he is one intense guy. He performs to the highest level, even in training, even in drills. Like, his agility shocked me. Like, he's such an athlete. It is remarkable. And in the training sessions that they were playing like 6-on-6 or whatever. Every time he missed a chance, he went absolutely crazy at himself. He was screaming at himself. I mean, to be that upset with yourself about missing chance after chance in training, it doesn't matter, mate.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this mini episode of the Scouted Football Podcast. We thought it would be fun to take a look back on the various guests we've spoken to and the players we've discussed and just seeing how they've panned out, really. As you might have guessed, this being the receipts episode, we haven't exactly gone through and shared some of our less piping hot takes from throughout the years. But if you'd like to get those too, then please do check out our Patreon, where every month myself and Phil Costa gang up on Stephen Ganavis for his Juventus propaganda and the occasional discussion about under 23 players. But that is all from me, Joe Donoghue. If you've liked the Scouted Football Podcast over our first 51 episodes, then please consider leaving us a rating or a review, or just letting us know on Twitter, or just telling a friend that you've been listening to a new pod and you've added one to your rotation. But yeah, take care, a lot of you, and bye for now.